Bert! Get him! Yeah! Ron Boehme was right.
I'm feeling spry. All right, you wouldn't believe it. It's the 19th of October. That's a Saturday. I don't usually do this on a Saturday. In fact, lately, I haven't done anything on time. But it's hunting season, so we got to squeeze these in when I can. This episode, as all episodes, the title sponsor of this show is OnX Hunt. And it was also the title sponsor of my week. I went up to Drummond Island, and it was different, let me tell you. Thank God I had OnX, and I'll tell you what, if you're ever thinking about going to Drummond Island and you have Verizon phone service, don't go. I mean, unless you don't want to have a phone call. But thanks to the offline maps, my buddy Trent said, make sure you download your maps where we are on the island, where we're hunting. I mean, I downloaded basically the whole island, but then I took some smaller ones and I could do them in higher res. And I put that on and I did the offline maps. And I'll tell you what, I would have had to literally go all the way back, which would have been a 30-minute drive back to the ferry to get phone service. Like I said, if you got AT&T, there's a little hot tip. You know what? Go to Drummond Island. You'll be able to talk. Not everywhere. There's still a lot of areas with no service, but you're going to fare a lot better. But you're going to fare a lot better with OnX with their offline maps, let alone every other feature they have. I had everything. Of course, it's hunting trip. Why wouldn't I have a gunner kennel with me? Why wouldn't I have W's phone number on my speed dial in case something went wrong with any of my Garmin products, which neither failed. I mean, I didn't put W to the test because I didn't have anything wrong with my Garmin. But they would have got it for me. They would have sent it They would have sent it by passenger pigeon if it was faster than next day air. You know what I'm trying to say. It's the best service you can get on anything you need to put around your dog's neck, feet, body, whatever. You go to W Supply, and of course you're going to use Garmin. Everybody that I was hunting with over the last couple days. In fact, on the way home, I got to stop and see some friends of mine that I don't get to see very often from the Northern Michigan chapter in NAVDA. And I spent a night at my friend Lance's house. And then I got to hunt with him and Norm and Bruce. And we had a nice day in the woods. We literally had I'm going to call it a Jennifer Broom lunch. Now, only two of you are going to know what that means. Norm is the doppelganger to my friend Jennifer. He brings out a cooler. It's got cut up cheese, sausage, venison, olives, 3 kinds of crackers, you name it. It was a charcuterie spread and it was the most gorgeous October day. It was probably 60 degrees. We camped down by a river, got a picnic table on a state campground. We didn't lay out. The only thing we didn't do is lay out a tablecloth. And we told stories. We had a beer after the hunt. It was just, I'm telling you what, it was a great week. I got to hunt with Trent and Heather and Jeremy, and then I got to hunt with Norm and Lance and Bob. I met Bob for the first time. Great guy. Not Bob, Bruce. And odd thing about that hunt, when he introduced him to me, they said, "Hey, Ron, this is Bruce Lee." And I'm like, "No, it's not." And he says, "No, listen, my parents named me before Bruce Lee made the Green Hornet, and I know only 3 of you know what that means." Anyway, we had the best time, but I also have the best gear. I had my K9 athlete for the dogs. I had my wilderness athlete for it's right here, listen. Hear that? That's in my Yeti mug. And no, Yeti's not a sponsor, but in fact, hang on a second. I drink an energy, I now mix them. I mix an Energy and Focus with a Hydrate and Recover. It always makes its own weird flavor, and it's totally different than the flavors that you pour in. I don't know why. Probably because they're 2 different flavors. But I absolutely love. I used to drink like a gazillion Diet Cokes a day. Like literally half a can, open up another half a can. And this is all therapy for me. This whole podcast is therapy for me. So anyway, had all my products up there with me. Mossberg shotgun, the Boss shells, Purina Pro Plan, of course, was there feeding my dogs every night. Walton's was there. I never did use my Walton spices, but I brought them with. I have a little, in the old days we called everything Tupperware. It's a little bin, but it snaps like Tupperware. Again, only 80, you know what Tupperware is. I always carry my Purina or my Walton spices with me in case we get somewhere and we're going to make a shore lunch or somebody forgot stuff. I was wearing Marshwear and I was wearing Arxis boots. Not all the time, but it felt so good to have everything in that four-wheel camper. And it's still in there. My sleeping bag, my pillow, my extra clothes, my small cooler, my big, everything is enclosed in there. King size bed on top, my dog kennels below, the inverter. I'm telling you what, it raised some eyes up there. I think Mr. Norm might be buying one of them. You just don't know. He was very impressed. Anyway, so this episode is part of a series that I do with my patrons. Now, you know, a lot of you know what that is. Patrons are people who send a few bucks a month to become a patron of the show, and they get some extra discounts on things, and they get access. I send them an email when they join. My number's on the signature. If it's not, all you got to do is write me. I've helped people find dogs. I've helped people place dogs. I've helped people find honeymoon spots. Literally, there was a couple years ago. He said, "Hey, Ron, I'm a patron of yours from Indiana, and my wife and I, or my fiance and I, were going to go up to spend our honeymoon. They're going to get married, and she must be a good wife. They're going to spend their honeymoon." So he can hunt grouse in the UP on their honeymoon. Now, I don't know if they've had kids since then, but I will help a patron with anything I can possibly help him with. I mean, other than, marriage advice, I tend to stay out of that ever since I tried to help Bruce years ago. That always backfires. But Patreon patrons are a fun group of people that are part of this. Some of them come to hunts with me. Next year, some of them are going to come to... I already reserved my house in Virginia, so I'm going to be able to have a very limited amount of patrons come there and go on the dove hunt next year. So it's just a great group, and this episode is also going to be in their feed. So to those patrons who get this in their feed, I apologize. This is merely bait to find more great patrons of this show. I'm being as transparent as I could be. Just like I am about all my sponsors: Onyx, Gunner, W, Garmin, Canine Athlete, Mossberg, Boss Shells, Purina Pro Plan, Walton's, Marshwear, Arxis boots, and four-wheel campers. I mean, really, I'm a walking commercial. But you know what? It's all stuff I love, and it's all stuff you'll love. Give it a shout. Give it a look. Look it up. You know what they all are. They all have a .com after them, or should I say .com. You know who that is. I love you guys. I love you girls. I hope you enjoy episode 9, Zigen, the Angry Years. All right, so those of you who thought this was going to be a podcast with some author or other hunter or friend of mine, or who knows who it would be, and I've got some really good ones coming up. What this is a short episode, and it's called The History of My Dogs. And Patreon patrons have been getting this since last January, and we're on number 10. Well, no, actually, we're on number 9. This should have came out in September. Duh. Anyway, it's kind of an oral history of all the dogs, some of the hijinks, some of the highs, some of the lows that I've had, and the last 3 episodes, like number 7, was all about Zigen and the terrible accident. He got smashed by a van and still ran in the Invitational. Episode 8 was, I think I should have titled that one the Little Bighorn Massacre. That's when Zigen and Frankie took off one morning in Virginia from my camper and decimated what would be easily termed as a New Jersey cat lady's palace. There wasn't any cats left when they were done with it. That was in episode 8. And this is just continuing. This is also going to go on the Patreon feed. And I always say this is just for the Patreons, but let's be honest. I'd like more people to become patrons. And maybe they don't know that these are the things we do. We do extra podcasts, extra recordings, besides the Zoom rooms and everything. So bear with me if you haven't followed along, because this is the first time I put it on the podcast. This is number 9, Zigen, the Angry Years. So I got to give you a little pretense. Zigen was my, not my first German wire hair pointer, but probably my all-around most talented one. But he had issues. He absolutely had issues. This dog, it's funny, the older he got, until he reached about 9, from about age 6 to age 9, he became, not against people, but other dogs, and dogs that were raised around him, which was, and anybody who has a German wire hair and says, oh, my wire hair's, or a Deutsch Drahthaar, and says my wire hair is a softie, my wire hair wouldn't hurt a flea. God bless you, and I wish I had your dog. And if you want to give it to me because it doesn't hunt good enough, that wouldn't matter. I would love another wire hair if I could be guaranteed that he didn't have this bully mentality. But so, along the way, I've had a lot of dogs, right? And Zigen was one of my mainstays. I had him all the way till he damn near could have got a driver's license. I think he almost made 16, but still along what I call this the angry years. I had to get rid of 2 dogs. One of them that I mentioned in the last episode, which was Frankie. And Frankie was the wire hair that I wish I could have kept. And these are weird decisions you have to make. I know a lot of people just have 1 or 2 dogs. I've had the ability with, 7 kennel runs over the years, and my new facility that has 7 kennel runs. I'll take a chance on a dog, right? I just brought in Woxie a couple months back to see how she turns out. It's not like I buy one dog and I got to wait till he's 7 to buy the next dog. If things come along, I try them. And anyway, I got this dog, Frankie, who was bred from a relative of Kettle Creek's Mo. I believe if I got the lineage right on that. That was a very famous dog in NAVDA world owned by John Crozier. And he was a solid dog. But right about the time he was teenager adult, like 18 months to 2 years, all of a sudden Zigen wasn't gonna tolerate him in the same household, the same yard. They were tiptoeing. They got into one good fight that I literally broke up with a lawn chair. And I'm not saying that's the smartest way to do it, but when you're all by yourself and there's 2 dogs going at it, the first thing I was outside, and the first thing I had was a lawn chair, and I stopped that fight. I kenneled both dogs up, took a deep breath, and it just turned out that some friends of mine from Michigan were going to go to North Dakota, and this has happened several times in over the years. Our friends will say, "Hey, do you have a dog that you want to get some hunting in? You can't, I'm busy. I couldn't go to North Dakota that year. I couldn't go to South Dakota." I think it was my friends Bruce and Terry and Dave. They took Frankie out to North Dakota and literally sold him for me. And it wasn't on purpose, but they knew the story, and especially when I told them what just happened with the fight. And these guys are all wire hair guys. They weren't rolling their eyes. They were like, "Oh, yeah, I feel your pain." And so they took him out to North Dakota, and being the socialite Michiganders that they are, they ran into some other people, and they ran into some farmers they knew, and one thing led to another, and they hunted with Frankie, and somebody said, "Boy, is that dog for sale by any chance?" And I remember getting a phone call. I think it was back when we had Nextel phones, the deep. And the story came across to me like this guy got to see him, and then they hunted with him, and they wanted to make me an offer on it. Well, the only reason those guys even courted the idea to get the thought back to me was because they know the fight that I just broke up between them. And when these two dogs fight, or most dogs fight, they're going to fight again. I mean, it is a management problem. I mean, you can probably, with two solid trainers, you could probably, as they say, beat it out of them, like the nuns did with the kids in school. But you know what? They always fought in the alleys afterwards. And I didn't want that kind of management. I've got young kids at home, and again, these were never people problems. These were dog-on-dog problems. So Frankie got sold to a guy. In fact, the money that I got from that was the money that I used to buy my first Bracco Italiano. That's going to be episodes, we're skipping ahead too far here. But I stashed that money away. You know, when you're married and you got a job and you're not the bookkeeper, you don't have the disposable income all the time. So I sat on that. I kind of buried that money in a can in the backyard. And I said that was going to be for another dog. But anyway, the other one that I had to get rid of, and I ended up giving this dog, his name was Tonzer. He was a solid liver wire hair. Definitely came from the Poodle Pointer mother lines. It looked like the most gorgeous Poodle Pointer you ever saw in your life. And I saw a lot of them through my friends in NAVDA early on, Ken Whitney and Dick DeCam. They had the Poodle Pointer mother line draughts, and they always had solid liver ones. In fact, there's a famous one that I'll probably have Dave on someday to talk about. But anyway, so Tonzer, I think his biggest problem is he could run too fast. You ever see a dog that could just run too fast? I've judged a few. But he was solid. When he was going slow enough to point, he pointed. When he wasn't, the wind went so fast that it made birds fly out. That's a little exaggeration. But anyway, he was a solid dog. I loved his personality. Everybody liked him. And now I'm in the same position now. I've got Tonzer and I got Zigen. And if you can picture, for a long time, the house I have in Virginia, I had a trailer in the backyard. All the guys that worked for me slept in the house. I brought in my camper, the one I was staying in on the hayfield in the last 3 episodes. And I'm taking a little nap. Now, like most campers, I don't know if it's most campers, the 3 campers I've had, the front room couch is on the bump outside, and it faces the door, the exit door, across the way. And these 2 dogs had gotten along. I mean, even during, I never feed my dogs. I feed them on a chain gang, of course, sometimes. But I don't free feed them in the house. I don't feed them together. That's just asking for trouble at some point. But Zigen and Tonzer, I was quite sure that Zigen must, either Tonzer exhibited no machismo, no testosterone, no endorphin that went up to Zigen's nose and says, "Ooh, you're thinking about challenging me, huh?" Anyway, I'm taking a nap on the couch, and I got Zigen on my left leg, head planted on there. He's snoring. I got Tonzer on my right leg. He's snoring. My head's back against the wall. I'm snoring. And in a split second, I had, what would be described as, 42 teeth? And I had 84 teeth right in front of my face, clanking on each other from 2 dogs that for some reason decided to be mortal enemies. Literally. And now picture being woke up by this. I'm laying back. I'm just kind of, I'm sure, I know I was sleeping because I think I would have heard him get up, or I would have heard the first growl. And I wake up to these 2 dogs going at it, going for the neck, going for the muzzle. And now, I'm not bragging here, but I've pushed up a gazillion rack frames and mezzanine beams, and so I'm a pretty strong guy. Even to this day, I'm still pretty strong. But back in the day, I could lift a couple people up with one, you know what I'm saying? I could hold my own. And luckily, unlike my daughter and my other daughter with their dogs and some friends of mine with their dogs, They always take their ID collar off when they're at home, Even though I was in the fenced-in backyard in Virginia, my dog's ID collars are on them all the time. And that is the only thing that probably saved me from getting hurt and them from trying to kill each other any further. So I wake up to this just teeth, I'll never forget it. It just teeth clanking on each other. And the bites going, with a left and a right and then a neck shot and then an ear shot. And I managed to get the ID collars on both of these dogs. And now I got them out. Now, I'm not saying my outstretched arms out, but I got them out to where their faces can't reach each other and they can't reach my face. At this point, I don't know if they're thinking, let's tag up on the guy who's stopping this fight, because it feels like they're going to kill me, but I know they were just trying to kill each other. And I managed to get up off that couch with both dogs, and Zigen was an 80-pound dog. Tanzer was not. Tanzer was probably 60 pounds. And I managed to stand up on that couch with my foot, open the door to the trailer. All I had was the screen door open, and trailer doors swing out, and I just kind of kicked that door, and I took Zigen on my left arm, my strong arm. I'm left-handed. And I literally launched him out of that trailer, grabbed that screen door, closed it, while still hanging on to Tanzer. And I was in a... And it's not like, it's not like Zigen came back to the door and tried to kick it in like a criminal. I got him, I pitched him out the door. I let go of Tanzer. No blood to speak of. It's amazing how dogs can fight and bite and fight and bite, and sometimes there is no veterinary care needed. So I just kind of got my wits about me and told him to sit and went outside. And there's Zigen out there, tail wagging, like, hey, what are you doing? Why'd you throw me out of the house, out of the trailer? So I put him in the truck trailer or my external dog box. Back in the day, I always used the Houndsman Deluxes and the Uplander Supremes. They were more like a hound dog box, but I had the lift lid on top for gear. Put Zigen in there, and I got Tanzer, and I put him in there. And I'm like, okay, what do I do? What do I do? The last fight that made me get rid of a dog was not like this. It was more of the tiptoe, walk up, blah, blah, blah. But I just knew that, and I saw the tiptoeing several times afterwards. And I no matter how many dog fights you see, they all feel just as intense. But believe me, they're not all just as intense. But this one scared the crap out of me. And I remember calling up John Crozier, and I told him what happened, and he says, Ron, he said, we can do this, but it's going to be brutal. And I'm like, well, what do you mean it's going to be brutal? He said, you drive up to Pennsylvania, and I've had to do this with dogs, because he's had wire hairs longer than most people. And he said, what we're going to do is we're going to have a riding crop, like a short riding crop, like a healing whip. And we are going to put each dog on a Jaeger lead. You're going to have one and I'm going to have one. And we're going to walk them around, and we're going to basically, almost like a medieval joust, we're going to heel them past each other. We're going to watch their behavior. And the first one that makes a peep, tiptoes, growls, cocks an ear, looks sideways at the other dog, is going to be thrashed. I don't want to say to death, obviously, but his words were thrashed. We're going to thrash that dog. And I was like, you know what? I could probably get into a fight with somebody easier than I could thrash a dog like that. Even though it's for a purpose, if you've got this dog that needs that kind of hand, I didn't have the stomach for it. I could have literally drove up to Pennsylvania. It wouldn't have been more than a 4-hour drive. John said he would help me with it. And I said, will it work? He says, those two dogs won't fight again. But they're both going to have to get tiptoe, and they're both going to have to get thrashed. They both have to know that nothing is worth it when it comes to looking up, squaring up, tiptoeing. And I just took a pass on it. I said, I can't. I actually knew a fella, and I think he had a Weimaraner. His wife worked at the plant where we did all this work for a decade in Virginia. And he had seen Tonser before. We went out to I would take a lot of clients out, especially the ones from Europe. I would take them out to, a pheasant preserve, quail preserve. But we were all friends, and this guy raised some quail. I think he had a Weimaraner. And we got together through my friend Bill Walters, and so we trained on some Saturdays, and he watched Tonser, and he was always just like, oh my God, I love that dog. And because his Weimaraner, unfortunately, didn't point birds. But what he did like was the way this dog ran. This dog ran big and ran fast. I literally called up, and I'm drawing a blank on her and his name, but I literally got a hold of them and made them an offer. Like, do you want this dog? And he says, I can't afford it. I said, I didn't ask you, do you want to buy it? I said, do you want to keep it, give it a good home, hunt it, do everything you're doing with the other dog? And he said, I had to tell him the story, and I had to get rid of, because there's no way I can manage this kind of, I would refuse to this day. If I had two dogs in this kennel that all of a sudden became enemies, one of them's going to go. That decision could be made on several factors, and that's one of the reasons I got into the Bracco Italianos. Because I was at a function the first time I went down to Florida. There was 25 Bracco Italianos in a fenced-in yard. And there was plenty of males and females and plenty of everything. And there wasn't one dog fight. There wasn't one tiptoe. There wasn't anything. Now, you could also make a lot of jokes about that. Well, yeah, around their Braccos, they don't hunt. No, that's not true. There are dogs out there with the disposition that they do not have to fight their fellow canines. And in fact, another Zigen story, just to reiterate the point. I have a friend down there in Virginia. His name's Brad Rodenheiser. I met him through construction. We shoot together at the club. We dove hunt together on the opening of a dove down there. And Brad and I had known each other for quite a few years, but we'd never spent any time we've spent time, shooting at the Flying Rabbit or shooting doves, but we'd never been to each other's houses. And we started talking one day about guns, and he had a bunch of drillings, and I like drillings. If you don't know what they are, look them up. It's a 3-barrel, a side-by-side shotgun with a rifle barrel below it. And I said, really? He said, yeah, you want to come over and see him? I said, well, that's just like bringing somebody over to show their any kind of collection. And, God, that happens every time I record these. So he says, bring your dog over. Now, because he was the only other guy in the Shenandoah Valley I knew at that time that had a German wirehair. And this is years after Zigen's last fight. Zigen was probably 9 or 10 at this point. And I went over to Brad's house, dropped the tailgate down. Brad and I are sitting there having a beer, talking guns. Went over into his gun safe. He showed me some guns he had, and I said I had one like this, and just what we do as bird hunters and drinking partners and friends, just kind of admiring each other's shit, right? And he said, well, let me see your dog. Get your dog out. So tailgate's down. We go back out into the driveway. And Zigen comes out, and he was a people person. He put his head right on Brad's shoulder and, kind of snuffled him. He goes, oh, he's a sweetheart. I said, well, he is, but he's not to be trusted. He says, I don't think Brad believed me. He might have believed me, but my sense was he didn't take heed to what I said, and his daughter happened to be over. I don't know if she was living there or not, but his daughter was there. She came out, and Brad introduced me to her. And I can't remember her name. Let's just say it was Sally. He says, hey, Sally, go get Bo. And she goes, what? He goes, go get Bo. I'm going to show Ron Bo. Bo was a German wirehair. And he never brought Bo out to the dove fields, and he never brought it to the Flying Rabbit, where I traveled with my dogs in the truck to work every day. Took them out at lunch, took them out at break. They were kind of a fixture on the job site. Anyway, so picture Zigen is on the tailgate, sitting between Brad and I, and Sally walks their dog Bo out. And Bo is not his name. I just can't remember his name. If Brad's listening to this, my apologies, Brad. Anyway, those two dogs from about the distance of 20 feet away locked eyes and went for it. Now, luckily, they were both in their, let's just say if they were humans, they were in their 50s or 60s, right? They didn't have the girth they had when they were 6 or 8 years old. And nobody was hurt, but, I mean, he jumped off. They looked at each other from 20 feet away and said, game on. It was like Marshall Dillon in the street with his hand over his pistol. And it was like the other guy just came out and they knew they were gonna throw lead. That's what drove me crazy about that breed. And I still say to this day, if I could only have one dog, and I lived where I would never have another dog encounter, but I might need some help with a wolf or a coyote or a bear or whatever else might be out there in this alternate universe that I'm living in that doesn't exist, it would be a German Wirehair, and I would clone. I would dig up the remains of Zigen. I know where he's buried. I have a little headstone out there. And I would have that dog cloned and be alone in the wilderness with me and Zigen again. But that's not the way it works in the dog world. So, yeah, what's funny is he spent his retirement years like on dove hunts, and we didn't just go once a year. We went Saturdays, we went Mondays, we went after work behind. He was usually by himself. He's one of the only dogs. Most people just don't bring their dogs out there to the dove hunt. And, so he had a lot of fun in his golden years. And the funny thing was, when we started having some Bracco Italianos, so I had Bravo and I had Artie. Those are stories yet to come on this Patreon feed. We had the first litter of puppies. And I'll never forget, the kids let the puppies out. And the puppies were like, 6-7 weeks when they're just about as cute as they can be or as dopey looking as they can be. And Zigen was out. And I literally had this thought in my head that he was going to start, the Little Bighorn Massacre, because the kids let him out and Zigen was out. And that dog laid on the ground and let 10 puppies chew on his ears, roll him on his back, pull on his legs. He was yiping with their sharp little puppy teeth. They literally were stretching him out like plot hounds on a bear. And I was like, where did that come from? Did he mellow into the old grandpa? Or did he just not have that gur anymore? Did he not? Or was it just the fact that I had never had him around puppies before? Maybe he would have been like that with puppies. You never know. You never know anything with dogs. It's damn near impossible to tell. But I will tell you, I'll probably bounce back to Zigen in the next episode. But he was, out of all my dogs, he was my favorite dog overall, with the caveat that I couldn't trust his goddamn ass. It was those years when and I'm going to say it was like, he was like 3 to 4, maybe 5, and all the way up to 8 or 9. I could not and would not take him in the field with another dog. Now, if it was a female dog, I never saw a problem. And that's pretty typical. I mean, it's just not normal. I would say if I had a male dog that attacked that knew it was a female dog and attacked it, I wouldn't have to go to the vet to put it down. I would take care of that myself. And if it was somebody else's female dog, I would expect them to do it for me. But I dearly love that dog. And this was the dog, for those of you, I might have covered some of this for my patrons. This is the dog that I used to take to banquets. He could open up a cooler. He could get me a beer. He never broke a can of beer with his teeth. This is a dog that killed like a what was that? A Sam Peckinpah movie, right? He was like a slasher movie when it came to game. But the funny thing was, beer cans, birds, fur, different story. I seen him pull the testicles right off of a fox squirrel that fell out of a tree. True story. But birds and beer cans, two of the things I love the most in this world, That dog had the softest mouth of any dog I've ever had, from a puppy all the way to old age. And I do miss that dog. And my wife eventually made this really cool glass block 3D image of him with a bird in his mouth. And it's probably one of my prized possessions. It's probably going... I'm sure the kids will take it out of my casket. One of them is going to want it because they all know this piece. But my request is that one... I can't bring the dog with me. You can't bring much else with you. But anything you can stuff in the casket, I think that's legal. Yeah, good old Zigen. He taught me a lot. He was a good test dog. He was a good hunting dog. He was a good people dog. He was not a runaway dog. I had more trouble with my Broncos running away. Them stupid things. Running away, getting out from the fence, going under a fence, going over a fence. I have a porcupine problem with a Bronco. I never had a porcupine problem with this dog. I mean, it's like I said, he was so close to perfect, except for that one little habit of trying to kick other dogs' asses. I know those of you who have been there, this is not just a German Wirehair thing. This could happen with German Shorthairs. It could happen with Weimaraners. It could happen with anything. It's just less and less likely with a lot of the breeds because, the testing system, the German testing system for sharpness, or hardness, whatever politically correct term you want to call having to kill some vermin in front of the breed warden, whatever you want to call that part of the German test. Well, I think it's kind of like the UFC fighters. It's kind of like they got a little too much steroid in them when they got into the ring and nobody did any drug testing. So anyway, that is probably the last installment, Zigen the Angry Years, how I had to get rid of some of my favorite dogs, how he spent his retirement years. He was an angel. I will tell you, I waited way too long to put that dog down. I learned a lesson with him that, again, I learned a lot of lessons. Training, life, hunting, etiquette. I mean, I learned a lot from that dog. And I also learned to not wait to the last hour to put a dog down. And he taught me that lesson. And I will never forget that lesson. Anyway, so for those of you who are expecting a normal podcast, I'm going to be recording one tomorrow that'll come out next week. It'll be anyway, you'll find out what it is when it comes out. I just wanted to get this one out there to let my regular listeners know that when you hear me talk about Patreon, this is one of, you get the Zoom room, you get more discounts on, say, Waltons and Marshware and Canine Athlete. Yeah, you get some bigger discounts for there. That's kind of worth it if those are products you use a lot. And you get the Zoom rooms, which we just have so much fun doing. But you're also going to get the history of my dogs, which this one I kind of kept a little. I don't want to say it was PG-13. But on some of the past ones, you guys are getting the nitty-gritty of a lot of stuff that I would never put on a podcast. And I encourage you to join the family, the Patreon family, and I will tell you that any patron gets my phone number, my email when they join up, and they can ask me for help, ask me anything. Yeah,